It's time for us to take back our communities and create unity. Come take a walk with me. Get it, King T Finesse. We hit the streets running. You know we coming. Building with knowledge to inform, to bring the love in. It's the unity in our community. Reform, move on to be strong. It takes you and me. Bring the issues, let's talk about it. Make a plan, bring it to life and never doubt it. To inspire, keep you going higher. Words put to action, fuel to the fire. Life gets better when we do it together. Brown eyes, King T Finesse, time to get up. Get up. Get up. For everyone the best. Hit it, King T Finesse. Join in and catch the vibe. All right. Join in and catch the vibe with me, MC BrownEyes. Welcome to Community Vibes with BrownEyes, and it is such a delight to be with you guys today. You know, it's October, and we're coming up on Halloween and into Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we got a lot of great shows, but we got a wonderful show today, and I got some beautiful, powerful guests here today that are boots on the ground in our community dealing with domestic violence, people. And I want to briefly introduce them to you. We have Amanda, who is the crisis response team coordinator. She goes out there and she makes sure that people get what they need. And then we have Kathryn, who is our assisting executive director of the program. So I'm sure they know a lot of information. The YWCA in Union, New Jersey has a lot of resources for people who have a need for different safety reasons and learning and training. So we're going to talk more about that today. But first of all, I want to thank you all for tuning in to another great show. This is our 10th show. Come on, give us a round of applause for that. 10 shows. 2022, we made it. You know, Community Vibes with BrownEyes is becoming a preteen. We growing up, y'all, and y'all growing up watching us. You know, I want to say that Community Vibes with BrownEyes is a project that was designated to reach into the depths of the community to shine light on those who are often overlooked. People like community leaders, nonprofit organizations, musicians, performing artists, young people just like you and me that decided to use their talent and their skills to go out in the community and present something to create change or a benefit for people all around them. And it is our wish, my wish, that we not only just get together to talk about, you know, these things, but to shine light and highlight them so people could know that these things are out in our community, what's going on in our community, and we can also have the choice to come out and get involved to make change. So I thank you for joining us, because joining us and spreading the word is a part of that change. We got a couple of people that support our shows. I'd like to give a shout out to them. First of all, Shalik the Beats from the Beat Shop for doing our video. Our videographer, he's also a producer. He's in Newark, New Jersey. You can look him up on Instagram. Want to give a shout out to my partner, the music under my lyrical wings, King T Finesse. Check out King T Finesse music on iTunes, Spotify, Instagram, and Facebook. And then I want to give a shout out to my friend Mignon, who has Minx Gold. She hooks me up with all the jewelries and all the things that I need to make me sparkle and shine. And then last but not least, I want to say hello and give a shout out to our Connect Us Youth Program in Bridgeport, Connecticut, Pam Lewis and Pam Hafer, who has been a great inspiration and support to Community Vibes with BrownEyes. So thank you all for tuning in. And our topic today is going to be about broken hearts, broken spirits, broken bones. Let's talk about domestic violence. You know, domestic violence is a topic that people don't like to touch. It's very personal to some people, and some people even believe that it's a private thing. You know, so we have our wonderful guests on the show today, and I I want to just talk about what your role is in the program, because you see a lot of people come in, I'm sure, with their personal issues, and I'm sure it's not easy for them to decide to come in, and this is the sensitivity that you guys deal with. So Amanda, your role as the crisis response team coordinator, tell me a little bit about your role and what made you decide to do this type of work, like work with domestic violence victims.
Of course. Thank you so much again, Michelle, for inviting us here today. I know it took a couple months to get here, and we're finally here, so super excited. I love talking. We talk all the time.
Yes, we talk all the time.
Might as well record it and, get it out there. So me, I've been in this work about 6 years now.
Wow.
In domestic violence. I got a taste for it down at the Atlantic County Prosecutor's Office. I started off in the Office of Victim Witness, and I was seeing victims of all types of crimes.
Wow.
And that got me started in getting a 40-hour domestic violence training down there in Atlantic County. And when I moved back up into North Jersey, I just stayed within, this field. My biggest thing is always connecting the criminal justice system and, social services. Like, where is this gap? Like, how come what can we do as an agency to kind of connect that gap between our criminal justice system and our social services? So, I do have background in criminal justice and social work. So crisis response team is exactly that. It is a program that connects our agency with all the local precincts in Union County.
Wow.
So that's 21 police departments, including Keene University, the Sheriff's Office, and County Police. So technically 23 folks, 23 entities that I, as one person, got to make sure that they are calling us, because the crisis response team, at the end of the day, what it is support to these officers, right? They're responding to domestics, and, they're very much on, I need to grab the abuser, like there needs to be criminal charges, they have all this paperwork they got to do, they have to get the abuser, put him in jail potentially, like if it's a physical or a simple assault, something very grave. And then, you have your survivor kind of on the back burner, right? Like super overwhelmed, doesn't know what any of these legal terms mean, like what is a restraining order, what is the difference between civil court and criminal court, like, they're sitting there, they may have their kids next to them, right? So like they may need medical attention, and so we come in as crisis response team members. These are trained volunteers in the community, giving back to their community, right? So they're responding to these domestics once they are already at the police station, because safety-wise, right, they cannot go out to
So I heard
the
you said these are trained volunteers.
Yes.
So that's interesting to me, because these are people from the community that has a concern and a care, that decided, like we said at the top of the show, to take their lives and go out, boots on the ground, with your training into the community to help others. Give them a round of applause. That's a beautiful thing, you crisis response team volunteers. I might come out there and join you guys. That's a beautiful thing. And you coordinate everybody and train them, you know, what to do when you have circumstances, so they can be supportive to the victim, that's coming.
We do. We have 2 trainings a year, so in September and January, 40-hour training. Because of COVID, it is virtual. Pre-COVID, it was totally interactive in person. So once they go out of this 40-hour training, they can then become a volunteer with our agency, with the crisis response team, or if we have like any other opportunities up, like maybe court advocacy at the prosecutor's office, we have a job skills readiness program. They could be a mentor through that program, just depending where the need is. So that 40-hour training certificate kind of opens the doors up to be a part of our agency, definitely.
Now, how do these volunteers protect themselves? Like, say they're out there, how does that go with them getting involved in a situation trying to help someone? Maybe what if the person see who they are or see who you are? Do you ever run into anything like that? Like you get in trouble with the victim because the person see you trying to help and they might not like you because of that?
Right. So with crisis response team, our volunteers, they cannot be subpoenaed by the courts. So everything they talk to the survivor about, completely 100% confidential. The only time that it may get a little choppy is if they disclose any abuse towards children or the elderly, or they want to hurt themselves or others.
Right.
That's when we're like, okay, no, we need some more trained professionals in here.
Right.
So whenever they do speak with survivors, they only use their first name, no identifying information. If they can't go in person and they call the survivor instead, star 67, private phone number, so that way the survivor can't call them back.
Yes, discretion.
And then it's kind of off the bat said, if I see you in the community, like for your safety and for mine,
right,
we don't know each other.
We don't know each other.
Right. That's happened where like I've gone to the ShopRite or something like during my day, and like I've seen a client like in the ShopRite.
Right.
I got to turn the other way.
And don't say anything.
Right. Only knock on wood, this hasn't happened, but like let's say like a DV incident's happening, they see me, I'm calling 911 on their behalf, or like we got to come up with like a signal, something.
Right.
But knock on wood, that hasn't happened, thankfully. But just overall for the safety of our staff members and for that client, if we're out in public,
right,
we don't know each other.
It sort of remind me how, of when people online and they think someone in trouble, they say, blink 3 times if you need help. Like you got to have signals. Like they joke about it and everything, but I think they get that from trainings like that. Like you need to send me some type of signal, that you're in trouble, so I will know and I can do anything. So let's come over to Kathryn. Thank you for coming out to the show. Give me a little bit about what your role is, at the program, and what made you decide to get into domestic violence work.
Yes, so I am the Assistant Executive Director.
Yes.
I've been with the YWCA for 7 years, and I actually started as an intern.
Oh, okay.
Earning my bachelor's in social work. I was in our workforce development program, and then I moved into the coordinator role. Following that, I earned my master's in social work.
Oh, wow.
And I was the director for 5 years.
We got some power sitting over here. All that education and all that information. We about to give it all to you today through Kathryn and Amanda, because they got their hands on it. They have the training, the knowledge, the education. So this is why I wanted you guys to come on this show, because it's so important, that we talk about it and that people will know, what they can do or hear about what's offered in the program. Now, do you have people from other counties? Or are you connected with other counties? Because I know you're in Union. I'm in Essex, county, in New Jersey. So what if, somebody from another county give you guys a call? How do you refer them? Or is it different in each county, that, people call to look for domestic violence help?
So every county has their own domestic violence agency. Okay. So if someone does call Union County looking for services, we would provide them with the information to their county. We do have a family justice center that is walk-in services Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30, and there's many times that we get clients from out of county.
Okay, great. So even if they call you guys and they're from another county, they can still be referred to other people that can help them where they are.
Of course.
Okay, well, that's a beautiful thing, because I know one thing about domestic violence, it's a very private thing. People like to look at it as. They look at it as, especially in urban communities, where, you get a lot of certain urban communities where there's poverty, there's crime, there's violence. So there's a lot of things that's going on in the community. They see violence a lot. They hear arguing a lot, crime. So when they see a domestic violence situation, they view it as normal. Or they just fight and don't get involved. They're going to be back together tomorrow. And these are the little nuances that cause people to get in further trouble with people. And I know it can be quite dangerous sometimes to intervene, and say, hey, well, I'm gonna say something, and if you do, you can get hurt. I got situations like that where people get involved the wrong way, and then they get caught up and get themselves hurt in a situation. But I think a lot of times people don't realize what domestic violence is and what it looks like. But domestic violence for me is very personal. I've had plenty of friends who have lost their lives, who've been hurt, who lost everything. You know, I used to be, you know, in domestic violence relationships because I wasn't educated, you know, enough to know what abuse was, because like I said, I grew up, you know, in a poorer neighborhood, a high crime neighborhood, and I saw a lot of things, and people equate control to love or being jealous. He must really like you, or she must really like you, you know, and so you tend to try to stay with people who are being abusive to you because of what you're being taught, you know, in that element. You know, sometimes I wish I would have known what I know now, and I would not have stayed or even bothered with certain relationships, because it causes mental, you know, damage to you, and physical damage if you're in a physically, you know, aggressive relationship. Before I have a goddaughter, you know, before we go into the types of abuse, her name was Lucy Kuza. And she was murdered in 2017 by her son's father that she was in a relationship with, and he was only 4 months old. And I had to talk to a lot of people. Shout out to my coworker, Lucianne. Lucianne, I used to go in her office all the time and tell her what I'm doing. She always give me great tips, give me great, you know, topics and inspiration to keep doing what I'm doing. And it's very important to me because she gives me a lot of good things to do. So shout out to you, Lucianne. Thank you so much. It's because of you that I tread through, and now this show is on the air. But I want to show a little video in honor of my goddaughter, Lucy Kuza, who lost her life through domestic violence. I've known Lucy Kuza from when she was just a little girl. She was a beacon of light to all those who came in her presence. She was a natural-born leader, fun, exciting, and loved to sing and dance. Lucy would often perform at many of our backyard barbecues and local talent shows, where she danced as a member of my youth dance group called the Bay Kids. Lucy also jumped at plenty of opportunities to be in plays that I would write for elementary schools she shared with siblings, my daughter, and other kids in the neighborhood. She was multi-talented and unafraid to share her gift with the world. I enjoyed many days watching her bloom and grow into a young woman. Lucy would later on give birth to 3 beautiful daughters and begin her journey of life as a mother. Relocating to another state didn't hinder us from being in touch. I used social media to keep in touch with her and continue watching her flourish in life. She eventually gave birth to a handsome young boy, and many of her loved ones gave well wishes to her new baby and life with her boyfriend. Then just like that, life took a drastic turn. According to the New York Post, on the night of September 17, 2017, Lucy and her boyfriend Robert Rodriguez were engaged in a heated dispute. Typical, some would think, of most relationships. Not sure what exactly happened that threw Robert into an intense level of anger. What I do know is that Lucy was tired of arguing and seriously thinking about vacating the relationship for good. The boyfriend was seen loading a gun in the doorway. It is said that Robert was known to carry a gun, even bragged about it. It was his typical behavior. You see, when you are in an abusive relationship and get used to threats, passive-aggressive behaviors, the consistent apology with gifts, and guilt tripping, one tends to view these outbursts as familiar and usual because they occur often without crossing that thin line. So I'm pretty sure Lucy was thinking that this was just another episode, and once her boyfriend calmed down and sobered up, it would be over as usual, and she could figure out a plan to deal with him then. Lucy sat outside quietly, saying nothing, as her boyfriend continued on in raging anger. So her brother asked her what she was going to do, and she replied, "I don't think he's going to do anything." And then reality came with a single gunshot. The boyfriend was seen walking away. Lucy was rushed to Jamaica Hospital that night, where she succumbed to her injury with her mother and family by her side, leaving behind her 4-month-old son and 3 beautiful daughters. Robert Rodriguez would later be arrested on Sunday, September 18th, and charged with murder. In January 2022, Robert Rodriguez pleaded guilty to manslaughter and received a 19-year sentence, nowhere near the time he took away from the children, mother, brothers and sisters, and close friends of Lucy, who will never in this lifetime see her alive again. There's so many stories, and yet this one story repeated over and over again in different contexts perhaps. But we all share the crushing sadness of having someone we love betray us and leave us trying to understand it all. Let us all take a stand against domestic violence for people like Lucy and millions of others whose lives are forever changed by this circumstance. Rest in power, my dear Lucy. You'll most certainly live forever in our hearts. Ooh. I just get chills up my arms, my body, you know, to watch somebody grow up from, you know, a child. And I thank her mom, you know, for sharing her with me as my goddaughter and her sister Tropicana. You know, I seen them grow from babies to young women to women, you know, mothers. And you're not thinking like something like that could ever happen to somebody so vibrant. You know, I mean, like every play I wrote, every song I wrote, every, you know, backyard barbecue or anything I did, you know, Lucy was always a willing participant of it all. She was full of life. She was full of life. She was strong. She was powerful. And this is one thing that a lot of people don't realize, you know, when you lose someone through domestic violence, it doesn't only just affect the immediate family who was devastated. It affects all the friends, everyone who was close to them, and the neighborhood. You know, like you said, it has a triggering effect. Some of these neighborhoods, you know, I didn't realize, you know, how domestic violence affected me, you know, until I moved away, you know, from, you know, a violent neighborhood. And you realize that you start doing things, you start being fearful of things. Like I'm even to this day, I'm fearful to live certain places where people have too much open access to knocking on my door or just showing up in my house. You know, I don't like to live places that have too many sliding glass doors, you know, where people can break in while I'm sleeping.
The houses are like too
close
together.
Yeah, they're too close together.
Populated.
Absolutely.
Because you think you got to look over your shoulder all the time.
It's traumatic. Yeah. It's very traumatic, and people don't realize how psychologically that stays with you. Somebody down the block or around the corner could not have even known her, but because it was nearby, like they say, that was close to home. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna lock my doors, and forever they remember that girl or that guy or whatever happened in that neighborhood could have been me. Mm-hmm. So that everywhere you go, you remember that, and you constantly want to protect yourself from that ever happening to you, you know, if you can. So, you know, one thing that is very important to talk about that you guys will be very good to talk more about is the types of, you know, abuse. Because it's the abuse and those gradual, you know, things that we think are small things that spiral into more things that get into greater things that create a more dangerous situation. You know, like they have all types of abuse, the mental abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse. They got so many different abuses out there, all about control, because domestic violence is all about behaviors and characteristics to control people for your own gratification, you know, and that's what it's all about, you know, controlling somebody to a point where, you know, you're devastating them and sucking the life out of them and taking everything for yourself. So I sound like I know what I'm talking about, but these are the professionals. And I want to talk to you. Tell me a little bit about the types and how it starts, the early signs of it all.
So I was going to say, exactly what you said. You have your physical, your mental, psychological, your financial, sexual, use of children, use of weapons, verbal threats, threats online, manipulation. Okay. So it could start off as really small things, right? Like oh, you're wearing that tonight? I think you should change. But like not in a way where it's like, oh, maybe it's cold out. Maybe you should wear a long sleeve. No, like I want you to wear a long sleeve because I don't want anyone looking at your body. Other things like, oh, I'm going out with my girlfriends tonight. We're going out like, I don't know, to the bar. Every 10 minutes. Oh, what are you doing now? Oh, are you still there? How about you share your location? Oh, what's the bar called? Just like little checkups, checkup after checkup. Things even like with family, which it starts that isolating effect, right? Like, oh, I'm going out with my cousin to somewhere, or like, oh, I have a family barbecue. Like you said you were working, so I'm just going to go to the barbecue.
Right.
Well, that's weird. Why would you go hang out with your family without me? Because it's my family, right? So just like those little manipulation tactics, those little verbal pieces is kind of where those red flags start to shine, right? So those little texting, calling, multiple callings a day, you know.
Right.
I'm a phone caller. Like I always talk to people on the phone, but if, you know, we're having a phone call every hour on the hour, you know, I need a little bit of space.
Right.
So it, you know, it could be something as simple base like that, which starts it, right? Because then the abuser can realize, okay, they're responding to me. Let's up the ante a little bit.
Right.
And that's where that physical can start. Finances can start. Like they'll say like, oh, you got that check? Okay, you know, we wanted to save for our house. Like let's open a joint bank account.
Right.
But you're not sharing the password with me to that joint bank account, or you're the primary card holder. What's that about? You know, so that little piece too, like slowly taking away those finances. The physical, same thing, like you're in a heated argument and there's a hit, a slap.
Throwing items
At them too, using other items against them. And then quickly turning it around later saying, you made me do that. Or if you didn't start the fight, then I would not have done that. There's no accountability. There's no sorry. Or if there is a sorry, it's something along with that sorry. Like, oh, I'll only say sorry if you do this for me.
Right.
There's always a give, right? There's no back and forth. So when we do our counseling or like we do, our agency bases off of psychoeducation. So, you know, we don't want to be an agency where we just are the response, right? Like we try to do that psychoeducation with the basis of power and control. Like that's our biggest tool that we use with survivors is here are the examples, using children against them, using the GPS on children's phones in order to know like where the survivor is, knowing that they're going to school at a certain time and then like, you know, mom may be following them, like little things like that. So we use those examples and we highlight them and we say, you know, this can escalate to physical or more grave high-risk examples. And so that's where we try to do a lot of prevention, because obviously if we don't educate that cycle, survivors will never break out of it. Like, yeah, they may leave that relationship. We might get a call from them a couple months later. Amanda, it happened again. Completely blindsided. I don't know what happened. So we always try to educate constantly. And we always try to get those tools out there. So like our power and control wheel, equality and inequality in relationships, healthy and unhealthy relationship wheels. Like we use those educational tools and we hound on them, because if not, you end up that same cycle over and over again. And then if children are involved, it becomes intergenerational.
And it's devastating for children because they grow up with that, you know, and it's so funny that everything that you mentioned has either happened to me before or somebody I know, you know, and that's because people think that domestic violence is a private, personal thing.
It's not.
They think that, oh, that's what's happening with them. Stay out of it. That's his wife. That's her husband. They're in a relationship. People fight all the time. You know, it's okay. It's normal. But a lot of that stuff is not normal and it's not okay. You know, because all it does is escalates or sap someone out of their life because this person is controlling them and putting their foot on this person for all of their gratification in life, and that person is getting nothing out of the relationship. They're just being used, for this person's gratification, financially or whatever, it may be. Now, one question I have is, what is, since COVID started, I'm pretty sure we've always had, domestic violence. But I know that since COVID, people were home, so I'm sure child abuse rates probably went up and domestic violence abuse went up. What is the ratio of men and women? Because I know that men also get abused, but what is the proportionate difference between men and women?
So now the statistic is about 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men who will be in a domestic violence relationship in their lifetime. In the beginning of the pandemic, we kind of had a slow period because people were at home. They weren't able to get out, make the phone calls, and receive services.
Right.
Now I can say that thanks to telehealth, we've actually served more clients than we may not have been able to serve before. People who may have had disabilities, who weren't able to get to our location, who didn't drive, didn't take public transportation.
Right.
They're able to do it at home. If they were being tracked, their cars or their phones, they can do it from home. Their abusive partner doesn't know that they're leaving. So I can say we've had countless cases that were able to get services.
Right. So do you think it was slow because people were afraid to go out their house? People were afraid to go to the doctor. People were afraid to go into crowded stores.
They didn't have the privacy to make a phone call.
Oh, okay.
Their partner was home. Everyone was in a different type of crisis.
Right.
They may not have known of our services. We are always out in the community. Amanda's at a tabling event every day, if not every other day.
That's where I met Amanda at a tabling event, and I went over to the table.
So for a few months, we weren't in the community. People weren't able to walk up to us, get the resources. Yes, there's the internet, but do they have time to call?
Right.
So sometimes we get emails. People are emailing our website asking for help, and that's the first time that we're able to reach out. So we're more accessible now thanks to COVID, but there was definitely a slow period when people were stuck at home.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that people are not stuck at home anymore, because I'm seeing, in social media, they have people who have YouTube pages dedicated every day to another victim that has lost their lives through domestic violence. It's very heavy right now. Society and people in the environment, they're angry about all kind of things: relationships, politics, race, sexual gender. Jobs, losing their jobs, health. It's everything is triggering right now. For so many people, and the environment is so harsh right now. With you being able to psychologically get through some of the things. Even with myself, sometimes I find that I have to come off the internet in order to get my mind back to a stable level to be able to deal with everything that's going on out there, in the world. And it kind of frustrates you sometimes, even if you're not involved in it. It's like I said, if something happens in your neighborhood or around you that's tragic, you may not have been involved in it, but just knowing about it and knowing that it was that close to you causes you some type of psychological dis-ease sometimes. And this is what happens when people don't pay attention. Domestic violence is everybody's problem.
I was going to say, we always say that it has intersecting elements.
Yes.
So like you said, like lower socioeconomic status, non-English speaking immigrants, like those with multiple children, no family in this country, no family in this state, right, this community. Not being able to get those job opportunities. We have folks that didn't even finish school, right? Wow. And, they're in these DV relationships. And I was going to say lately too, it's not only just intimate partner, so like a relationship, like we've been seeing a lot of familial abuse. So like we'll get calls where it's like, my mother, my dad, my sibling. I got a crisis response team call out a couple of weeks ago where it was the sister's boyfriend.
Wow. Okay.
And the brother, but they were all living together. So like he was like, I felt like a secondary victim to the DV because how can I save my sister? And when I did try to intervene, she saw me as the enemy because she was so trauma bonded to this boyfriend.
Right.
And I was like, you need to get out. Like, we say this a lot, like, in this work, where like we can provide all the resources, we could provide all the education. You can lead a horse to water, right? They're going to decide whether or not they want to drink from it.
Right.
So our biggest thing is, keeping those biases aside. And it's just like, as long as I did my job and I was able to have these conversations, I was able to provide any other resources based on their case in the community, do psychoeducation within ours, even, provide them shelter, whatever it may be.
Right.
I've given them the tools. It is up to the survivor what they want to do.
Right.
And in that situation, I was like, at least if I could get the brother out of that, his sister and the boy, like, her journey is something completely different.
Absolutely.
And I say this when I do the 40-hour domestic violence training twice a year. I say, listen, like, you think you've seen it all, and that next case, get this, gonna blow you out of the water.
Wow.
I had a volunteer that I spoke with her just yesterday. She's part of our court advocacy at the Family Justice Center. So she helps with court preparation for restraining orders. And she provides like that physical support when survivors have to speak in front of the judge. And she's like, Amanda, like, you were right. I am hearing a different story every single time.
Every single time.
And when I think
case is the same.
And you think you have the resource, and then like they're gonna throw you for a loop, and it's like, I gotta open up my directory, I gotta open up my Google page, right? Like I have to figure out a resource for the survivor.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because a lot of people always say when their loved ones and their friends are concerned about their relationships, they'll say, well, this is my life. I'll if I want to talk to them or be involved with this person, it's my right. I'll do what I want to do. But what they fail to realize is that their relationship becomes everybody's relationship. If this person happens to be somebody who has low self-esteem, is very controlling, have their own mental things that they're dealing with, and they're using you as an object of control and gratification for their own problems. What happens is, so many times, the connection of mass shootings, something I was hearing on your site at the symposium, it's connected to domestic violence. I mean, like, you have so many relationships where the person get upset and they want to kill the whole family. Even if the whole family does not live in the same house, they will go from house to house to house until they get caught or whatever. And now all those people that you said should mind their business, it should not be, this is my life and I'll do what I want to do, their all lives are in jeopardy because it is one relationship that you should have at least listened and said, well, let me see if what you're saying is right. Let me have an open mind, because these people care about me. They've been caring about me all my life. Why would they tell me something wrong now? I know my heart is because I lived it. So I know. When I lived in Georgia, I was in a domestic violence situation where I was treated very, very harsh. I won't go into detail, but it was a bad situation. And I decided that I needed to get out of the situation. It was very grave like that. So I decided to, on my own time, to start looking for my own place or whatever, and told some people who I knew who cared about me. And I decided, once I got my apartment and everything, the morning that he left to go to work, that was my day of getting away. I said, when he leaves, I'm going to pick up that phone, pull up, and we're going to pack all my stuff, and I was out of there. And let me tell you, I was in my 1-bedroom apartment once I left with a blow-up bed and a 20-inch TV on a box. Wasn't even a crate. It was a box. And I was happy. I was happy because I was relieved that I was away from that situation. He didn't know where I was, and that I could lock my door, and I didn't have to worry about somebody coming there to abuse me, or me being walking around on eggshells. I'm not really the type of person that walk around. I'm a fighter. Like, we would be throwing down, but still, I'm a woman, and I was down there with no family, so you never know what's going to happen. So even though I know I would fight back, it still was scary, because I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to have to go through that. So it meant a lot for me to get away. And the longer I was away, the more I was able to look back on the abuse and see how detriment it was to me. You know, because a lot of people think that does not affect them. So, you know, like what I did is I snuck away like that. You know, what are some of the things that people, if they decide that they may be in a domestic violence situation, you know, what are some of the things that they need to do, you know, before they even prepare to want to leave? What are some of the things they need to think about?
So with our services, we always talk about safety planning with themselves, but also with their children. So a few of the things that we would recommend is to prepare documents. So important documents such as like birth certificates, social security cards,
medical reports.
Yes, insurance cards, all of those things. You also want to tell your children a safe word. So if something does happen prior to leaving, they know. Do they run to a neighbor? You know, one of those things. Packing clothes.
And also, like you said, like using that safe word, knowing the exits out of the house. So if you're on a second floor, like maybe you have that fire exit to go down. Or if you're like on a second floor, like you know that there's that emergency exit, or like you can go down a hallway and that's the way out, or even the front door. When we kind of do like as you're preparing to leave and once you've left is kind of how we split up like our safety planning. So as you're preparing to leave, like Kathryn said, you want to pack up that to-go bag. You want to make sure all important documents are in there. You want to make sure you either memorize or you have a list of like important phone numbers. So like your local police, your local hospital, a next door neighbor, trusted next door neighbor, even like a school social worker, or a trusted person at your job. You know, little phone numbers or people like that. If you do have access to your own car, making sure that the trunk of the car is what's backed into the driveway. So when you run out the front, you get in, zoom out, right out the driveway. Knowing where your closest transportation spots are, your closest parks, right? Like you want a big, expansive area to kind of run into, so that you could lose them, right? If they are running after you, flagging down your nearest police officer that you see, or running straight to, you know, the local police precinct. And then having our 24-hour hotline on hand, or the National Domestic Violence Hotline on hand. And then, you know, the safety planning piece there is getting that restraining order. And once you do get that restraining order, understanding that you've had maybe all examples of the abuse. So I say this a lot when we do our crisis response team call-outs. I say, do you have pictures? Do you have videos? Have you had criminal reports in the past? You need to get copies of all that. Back it up to a hard drive.
That's another thing what you just said, not to cut you off, but the key thing is a lot of people in abusive relationships, they don't want to go to the police station. They don't want to file a report. They're afraid that the person is going to find out, or the police is going to come and do some harm to the person because, you know, and then they're going to feel bad about it. They have all these mixed emotions about it, but when somebody files a report at the police station, that's discreet, right? They don't have to will they go and inform the person that the report was filed on them?
So they have to for a restraining order. So when they petition or apply for a restraining order, police have to serve the abuser with that restraining order, because both parties do have to show up at a hearing. So in the state of New Jersey, once you get a final restraining order, it's for life, covered for life, unless you, the survivor, you dissolve it. But so a temporary restraining order usually covers you for about a week. And within that week, you meet with a judge. Both parties have to be at that hearing. With COVID, a lot of the nervousness was kind of helped because with COVID, it was all via Zoom. So like a lot of the times, survivors wouldn't want to go to petition for a restraining order because they were like, I have to stand in front of a judge with him right next to me. I don't want to see him. I don't want to do it.
That's kind of
so that was putting So it was putting a lot of our survivors like, yeah, they'll do the restraining order, the temporary, and then when they say, oh, final hearing is, you know, 5 days from now, you both have to be there. The survivor's like, what are you talking about? I thought I'd do this and then it's over. Right. So that legal education isn't really there. So our Family Justice Center and our crisis response team members, we try to give them that education so that they're fully informed what it's going to look like once they petition or apply for this temporary restraining order.
Right. Now, let me ask you about financial abuse. Like, say I live with this person, they pay all the bills. I don't have a job, I don't have money, and I need to get out of here. What type of resources, I know you can only tell me for Union County, but what type of resources would they have for somebody like me?
So that's a little hard. Usually we will advise survivors to go down to their local social services office to see if they apply for cash assistance. And then they'll be able to get that cash themselves without it, going into the shared finances. Or if it is shared, it becomes a little harder. Like, we always try to say, keep cash on you, or open up a bank account in preparation. This sometimes becomes a little harder, especially for immigrant survivors or non-English speaking survivors. Right. Because they did not have finances coming over here, or they're being paid under the table, or, like you said, like the abuser is the one that's really in charge of it all.
We do have a workforce development program.
Oh, okay.
So it helps our clients with financial goals, education goals, career goals, and even entrepreneurship.
Right.
So let's say in the relationship, the other partner or even the survivor's credit was ruined, right? For their own reason, survival. We help them. There's a microloan program that we're able to give them $100, and for 10 months they pay $10 to pay off the loan, and their credit will go up. They can do it as many times until they have a 720 credit score.
Wow, I need to come and get my credit score.
But we help with all other things, right?
Yeah.
So,
but I could, in a victim's view of it all, I could see how scary that might be if I'm in a situation and you're telling me I got to do all of these things before I can even get out. Right. This is why it needs to be talked about. We need more advocates. We need more people. Domestic violence is a serious thing, and a lot of people feel trapped. A lot of people feel trapped. They feel like they don't have the time to do all that they have to do to get away, so they rather just try to stay and deal with it and hope that they survive it or get out eventually. And it's causing more detriment to their lives. So that's why I think a lot more people need to get involved in, domestic violence, come out. And now that we know that there's volunteering, I mean, like we could go take some courses, spread the word. If you don't want to even be on a crisis team to go out and be right in it. See, I'm the type of person, I like to be right in it, but then again, you have to train me because I'd be like, I remember that happened to me. I'm going to knock him out,
Right.
Gotta make sure I don't make it personal.
You got to make sure you don't talk like that, yeah.
She don't have any family. He's a bully. That's who he is, I can see me now, You can't go out there like me. I gotta be trained before I go out there. Or even if you don't want to go out into the community, it's good to just your center gives so much training, and different programs. What other things do they have, like programs there for people who just want to come to the YWCA for any type of training or programming?
So the YWCA as a whole, we have a couple of different programs. So we have our 24/7 hotline. So we're the state designated, state funded domestic violence agency for Union County.
Yeah, show that up there on the screen for us. I took a little snippet of your website and everything to show some of the programs and the number. That 908 number, help number, 355-HELP.
Yep. So we're in charge of that 24-hour hotline. We are in charge of the only domestic violence shelter in Union County as well. We have our legal services, which is through the Family Justice Center. So we do referrals to free legal aid or pro bono services, education on restraining order process, child support process, child custody battle processes, divorce proceedings.
Wow.
And we also help with our court advocates. They help with court preparation. And like I said, being that support, because now that COVID has kind of been letting up, they are doing hearings in person. So now survivors are like, I don't want to sit there in front of the judge and my abuser by myself. I need someone there to hold my hand. We can be there for them.
Right.
We also, as Kathryn said, we have our job readiness program called STEP. We also have our CRT program. We have counseling, case management. Counseling is either individual or group.
Right.
12 sessions, English and in Spanish. Case management, our case manager. Our case manager, if you have a lot of moving parts in your case, like a lot of applications are going out, she's kind of that person that can help you achieve those goals in order to be sustainable and healthy, like in your life moving forward after, or even helping you prep to get out. We also have, with the Department of Child Protection and Permanency, or formerly known as DIFUS, we have domestic violence liaisons. So in the event that there is a domestic situation and there was abuse toward the children, or they were exposed to abuse, and DCP&P was called, the survivor has the right to ask for a domestic violence liaison, because sometimes DCP&P, they're thinking about the child and they're thinking about reuniting the family, right? Right. But we know if there's no accountability, it's just going to be high risk, violent, no matter what happens. So our DV liaisons come in and they kind of do that education piece with DCP&P to say, hey, maybe, the family together is not the best. Right. We also have our PALS program, so Peace, a Learned Solution. It is counseling for children ages 3 to 17 that have been exposed to domestic violence. So arts, music, drama therapy. The non-offending parent gets counseling and case management as well, while the children are kind of relearning what it means to have a healthy relationship, right? Now that offending parent is out of the picture. Right. And then we also have a domestic violence liaison in Trinitas Hospital in the ER. So she is our ER domestic violence liaison. Wow, okay. So in the event that there is detrimental physical abuse. And our survivors have to go into the ER. Right. And the doctor kind of suspects some DVs going on, or they were called. Call it as it is. It was a domestic. Yeah. Our ER DVL, she comes in and she safety assesses and either does case management or referrals internally or externally. Right. And then we always do community education.
Oh, yes. I met you doing community education. Right. Community Vibes met with community education from YWCA.
So, and that's me. We do try to get out there. Even in my everyday today, I'm putting our hotline cards around, in bathrooms, at doctor's offices, dentist offices. We work in tandem with social services. We make sure they have our brochures. Me with all the police departments. I make sure that they're stacked up, with our hotline cards, our brochures. So we try to be here. We try to be everywhere at once.
You guys have a wealth. Now, if I live in Essex County, can I come to Union YWCA and take part in some of the activities?
So no.
Come on, guys!
Right, unless Essex County advocates out on your behalf.
Oh, okay.
So in the state of New Jersey, every county, I believe there's 20 counties in New Jersey. We all operate under an umbrella. It's the New Jersey Coalition to End Domestic Violence. Okay. So that way all the counties were all kind of on the same page. Right. And in Essex County, that's the Essex County Safe House. They are the state designated, state funded agency for Essex County. Essex County
Safe House. You hear that, Essex County? And I also know that the SHANI BARAKA Women's Center does a wealth of program and different activities in the community as well. So I met them before too. Don't worry, I'm going to get to you soon. And that's a whole history in SHANI BARAKA herself with the domestic violence that happened with
Essex,
her.
I say Union County's big, Essex County's bigger.
Very
more
big.
Populated.
Yes.
So you cannot only have one agency. I believe they have the SHANI BARAKA, the Essex County Safe House. They have a Family Justice Center. Okay. And they also have, I believe, the Rachel Coalition. They're out of Bloomfield, I believe. So that's 4 agencies that kind of try to tackle, Essex County and provide services.
Wow. Well, let me ask you ladies a personal question, and you can answer it or not. If you don't feel comfortable, that's fine. But how do you go home and close your door and cope mentally with some of the stuff that you experience, like a night of helping someone else get away and seeing, like you said, everybody's circumstance is different. How do you keep sane and able to go out there and continue to do what you do?
I love to read. It takes me and brings me to a different world. Not a romance person. I like more of suspense and thrillers, and it's kind of backwards because I like to read worse than what I know in the world to know that what we deal with is not as bad. Like, there's worse out there. Right. So it's putting me into fiction, I guess. Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that sounds pretty good to me. I like that, reading. I got a lot of friends that read. I don't know what it is about reading with me, but I'm an audiobook type of person. Because as soon as I pick up a piece of paper and I start reading, within 5 minutes, I'm ready to go to sleep. I don't know why. Only if it's in the daytime, like if I'm taking a class and I have to take a test, then it'll be motivation to stay up. But if I'm just in my bed, like every night, my mom reads a book.
Falling asleep.
As soon as I start reading, it's like somebody gave me a zap of something, and I'm going to sleep. So, but I can listen to audiobooks when I'm in bed at night. But other than sitting at a table and studying for something, or even with learning information, they got everything on video now. Go to anything you want to learn, you go to YouTube and put it in there. They got seminars, symposiums, everything. I have to read any. I just listen and look and check out the video. I'm a visual and hands-on person, so I guess that's how my brain operates with learning better, through visual things. So how about you, Amanda? How do you what do you do when you close your door at night after a tragic or traumatic event?
I will say, so prior to doing community outreach and crisis response team, I was at our shelter for 2 years. Okay. And I knew it was getting bad and that I wasn't taking care of myself when my nightmares, I would hear the hotline.
Oh, wow.
Like, I would wake up in the middle of the night because I would hear the hotline ringing, and like my nightmare, the whole nightmare was just me grabbing at the phone and I couldn't pick it up. And when that was happening, I was like, we got to take a couple days off. I got to take these, we need to reset.
I'm sure. Sure.
And so, because some days I would drive home in silence just to gather my thoughts. Right. And same thing like Kathryn, I love reading. I love exercising. I love trash reality TV.
Me and you both.
And I like comedy podcasts. Okay, podcasts and videos. When I drive to work, I'm listening to laughter in the morning, right? To kind of prep myself for the sad things that I might see that day. Yeah. But because if you're in this work, 6 years later, I've heard the worst of the worst, especially when I was in the prosecutor's office, you hear crazy things. And if you're in this work and you're not taking the time to think of yourself, right? How are you going to think of others? How are you going to provide your best care to others? How are you going to be able to sympathize?
Absolutely.
If you become pessimistic or you hurt yourself, in the way of your thinking. Right. I always say that to people that are in this work or social services in general, you got to take a day or two to yourself. Right. Because if not, everything you work for can go down and you can, end up doing more hurt than...
Well, that's a good thing to do, like you said, the comedy. Me, myself, I like music.
That can lighten up.
I love music, and that's what helps me get through a lot of the things that I go through. So for the people who are watching, thank you for tuning in. If you think you are in a domestic violence situation, in a relationship, in a household, or whatever your dynamic might be, because Kathryn and Amanda said, everybody's situation is different, and you should seek the help in your county. We showed the domestic violence hotline number is also all of that information, including the YWCA information, is going to be at the bottom of this video so that you'll be able to click on the links and go to their website if you need help or assistance in whatever you need. But one thing I could say, plan strategically. Yeah. A lot of people get upset in their emotions because they feel like they're being abused and they threaten the abuser, telling them they're going to leave, telling them what they're going to do. You don't need to do like I did. Be a phantom. Let them go, and then when they're not around, safely leave, and so that you can take care of yourself with those who love you. But reach out to them. So if anybody want to get in touch with Amanda and Kathryn, how do they find you, and how do they, get in contact with you at the YMCA?
So our website,
YWCA, sorry.
Our website is www.ywcaunioncounty.org. There's a contact tab on that website, and it can be directed to either one of us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so y'all heard that. www.ywca. And you could also click on the link under this video because it's down there, and I want to make sure that you guys have what you need. Hopefully you learned something today. Hopefully something moved you to see in your relationship, what you might need to pay more attention to that might spiral into something bigger. And I'm so happy that Amanda and Kathryn took it out of their busy time, because they are busy ladies. They got a lot of things going on. To come on Community Vibes with Brown Eyes, it's a blessing for me. It's a blessing because that's who I am. I get the information out to the community, and I'm glad to be able to have this platform. But is there anything you want to say to the people before we leave out for the show for today? It went so quick. Wow.
I will say, being in this work, and especially with domestic violence, it's so frustrating to say that, unfortunately, the burden has to be on survivors. That burden of evidence, that burden of safety planning, planning how to leave, what is the best exit strategy, who can I trust to tell?
Right.
And so, call your county, call the 24-hour hotline. Let's say you're at your lunch break, or you're out at the park with your children, give your local county a call and say, this is all that's going down. What are the steps I need to take first? Because a lot of the times what happens is we'll get a call at the hotline, and it's I left with the clothes on my back, and I'm sitting in the park, and it's raining, and it's 11 o'clock at night.
And no plan or anything.
Nothing.
So you have to plan. So make sure you get your plan together and get a strategy together, and get to the people you need to help you get out. But with that, I want to thank you ladies for coming on Community Vibes, and thank you all for tuning in. Just want to say Community Vibes with Brown Eyes was produced by myself and my co-producer, Kirsten Fulda. We're here at Bravery Studios with our great engineer, Marvin. Shout out to Bravery Studios here in New Jersey. And I just want to thank anybody. If you want to find us, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and you can always contact us through there, or you can call us at 862-231-3433, or email us at communityvibesbe@gmail.com. Thank y'all once again for tuning in, and we're going to leave y'all out with a song that I wrote and produced by King T Finesse, Ain't I a Woman. See you next time.
This is for the woman you can't deny. The power's in her stride. And ladies, if you feel me, hands up and let's break it down tonight. This is for the woman you can't deny. The power's in her stride. And ladies, if you feel me, hands up and let's break it down tonight.
Sometimes I get vexed when I don't understand how a man can't claim who I am. I'm rough yet feminine to the touch, and kicking around respect. I get much props as I flow. Lyrics blow for blow, coming strong like the masculinity in any show. So what's up with the egocentric state of mind? You're blind, I'm doing fine, getting mine. 666 up the girly girl folktales day after day. If you don't, then you fail. You see, I'm a woman who's gotta get a life. I know what's right, times are hard, the money's tight. I keep up the faith and do our jobs. Rapping on the mic / security guard. Construction locksmith for doing the woodwork. Things that I like cause the money won't hurt too. Do little things that I need to make me feel real. Now let me tell you the deal. There's nothing like coming home to something you work for. There's nothing like ability to do more for something you're building. Home for the future. Home life is cute, but independence is cuter. Some may think I'm a little out of touch, and the man in my life may not like it much, but the will is strong and I stand on my own. Still a certified woman right down to the bone.
This is for the woman you can't deny. The power's in her stride. And ladies, if you feel me, hands up and let's break it down tonight. This is for the woman you can't deny. checking. Tick, tick, tock on the clock, I be wrecking the mic with the thought of mine. You know that it's genuine. Line for line, break it down within no time. Kicking the flavor, feminine behavior. Take some now, or you can save it for later. A female MC, so there's no time to waste. Whether male or female, I'm rocking this whole place. So take time, time as I bust a rhyme. Mac this back, cause it's packed in the mind. The crowd is swarming, you know that I'm hyped up. The attraction for the action could never get me psyched up. Just grown up as a grown up and the people are shown up. Twist the tone up and I'm known up and down with the hot sound. The money making, taking and breaking, ain't no mistaking. Never faking, cause I'm shaking and baking. It's in the making money, nothing funny. No one to call me honey, silly rabbit, it's a habit. Tricks of a kid, cause like a car on a tar on the mic, I leave skids. Now let me say that again. I'm the money making, taking and breaking, ain't no mistaking. The faking and shaking, baking, it's the money, I'm raking it. I'm double the trouble, the bust your bubble, never stumble, tongue twist, no list, science, I can dismiss. Now, yo, I've set the tone, live and direct, certified to the bone.
This is for the woman you can't deny. The power's in her.